They said it was only myth. But what if it wasn't? Before the flood, before Babel, before the first empire ever rose, angels walked the earth. Not spirits, not visions, but radiant beings of light who breathed the same air as man. The ancients called them watchers, and the Bible hints at their story in a single haunting line. The sons of God saw the daughters of men. Genesis 6. For thousands of years, theologians have argued over what those words truly meant. But now, with the rediscovery of ancient texts once buried beneath the sands of time, their secret is no longer hidden. These were not metaphors. These were beings who descended from heaven, and their presence changed humanity forever. They taught men secrets of heaven, the movements of the stars, the art of metal and war, the language of light and shadow. Civilization as we know it began under their guidance. But the cost was everything. Because every time heaven touches earth, it leaves a scar. Imagine it, angels standing among mortals, their glory too bright for human eyes, their voices like thunder over the mountains. And then imagine what happened when desire entered their hearts. The Book of Enoch tells us that 200 watchers gathered upon Mount Hermon and swore an oath that would alter creation itself. They would take human wives, and from those unions would be born beings of terrible strength, the Nephilim, giants who devoured the earth. The world trembled under their power. The air turned heavy with corruption, and even the rivers seemed to recoil from what had been done. The Creator's breath grew silent. Heaven had crossed a line that even eternity could not overlook. But here's the mystery no one dares to speak. If the watchers were punished, why do so many ancient cultures remember their return? From the shining gods of Egypt to the tall beings of Sumer and Babylon, they all tell the same story. The sky opened, and beings descended with faces like fire. Could the memory of the watchers be more than legend? And what if their influence never truly left? Some believe that what humanity calls divine inspiration might just be echoes of those who once fell. Stay until the end, because what began on Mount Hermon may not have ended with the flood. And if the signs are right, the watchers might already be walking among us again. They were never meant to fall. The watchers were not rebels. They were guardians, sent by God to watch over the sons of Adam, to protect what had been made from the darkness that had once devoured the heavens. They came as shepherds of creation. But even shepherds can lose themselves among the sheep. Enoch wrote that their descent began with reverence. They taught humanity the knowledge of the skies, how to read the stars, how to measure time, how to plant in season and harvest with precision. They built altars of stone that aligned with constellations, cities that mirrored the heavens. For a time, man and angel worked side by side. Civilization began to awaken, but knowledge is a dangerous gift. The Watchers started to reveal secrets that were never meant for mortal hands. How to forge weapons from metal, how to mix herbs into potions of power, how to use symbols to command unseen forces. These were not teachings of light. They were whispers from the deep, and it began with one name, Azazel. He showed mankind how to make blades that cut not only flesh, but faith. He painted their faces with war, and taught them to call upon forces that were not of God. Under his hand, violence spread like fire. The other Watchers followed his path one by one, until heaven itself looked upon the earth and saw that it had been defiled. In the Book of Enoch, the prophet describes the moment he was taken up into the clouds, the place where the Watchers once stood before the throne. Their leader, Semjaza, trembled before the voice of God, and in that voice came judgment. You have left the high heaven, the holy eternal place, and lain with the daughters of men. You have defiled yourselves with the blood of flesh, but the judgment did not fall immediately. For a time heaven was silent. The angels who had not fallen watched in sorrow as their brothers sank deeper into desire. They still walked among men, glowing with a fading light, their eyes dimmed by the weight of guilt. The ancients called this era the Vigil of the Watchers, a season when heaven hesitated, when mercy battled wrath. But every silence has an end, because soon the cries of the innocent would rise like smoke to the throne of God, and the command would come, seal them in the depths until the day of judgment. Yet even now, some say their influence remains, not as angels but as echoes, as bloodlines, as whispers that move through kings, priests, and those who seek forbidden knowledge. If this is true, then the vigil never ended. It only went underground, and in the next revelation we'll descend with them into the union that defied heaven itself. It began as a whisper in the wind, a hunger that even angels could not name. The Book of Enoch tells us that the watchers looked upon the daughters of men, saw their beauty, and were consumed. What began as admiration became longing, and longing became defiance. On a night that the ancients feared to record, 200 of them gathered upon Mount Hermon. The sky was burning with stars, and the mountain trembled beneath their vow. One by one they spoke the words that would unmake their purity. We will descend together, and none shall turn back. Lightning tore through the heavens, the mountain blazed like molten glass, and in that blinding storm heaven lost its first sons. When they walked among humans, the earth changed. Women bore children not fully mortal, not fully divine. The scriptures call them Nephilim, giants of old, men of renown. But these beings were no heroes. They were predators clothed in glory. They ruled cities with terror, demanded worship, and drank from rivers of blood. The apocryphal texts say the earth cried out beneath their weight. They devoured everything, animals, crops, even men. The world became a mirror of their corruption. Every invention that should have built peace was twisted toward war. Every secret of heaven became an instrument of darkness. And when mankind looked to the sky for help, the heavens were silent. For the watchers had broken the boundary that kept creation in harmony. Their lust had birthed monsters of flesh and spirit. Even the stars, it was said, dimmed at their sight. But amid the chaos, one man still listened for the voice of God, a man named Enoch, who walked with the Creator while the rest of the world bowed to the fallen. He was shown the full horror of what the watchers had done and the fate that awaited them. "Bind Azazel hand and foot," the Lord said, "and cast him into the darkness that is beneath the earth." That command marked the beginning of the end. The angels who had fallen would beg for forgiveness, but their pleas would find no answer. And their children, the Nephilim, would face extinction in the waters of the coming flood. But here lies a mystery few speak of. If the Nephilim were destroyed, why do traces of their presence still echo in the oldest myths? Why do tales of demigods, giants, and starborn kings appear in every ancient culture, from Egypt to the Mayans, from Greece to Sumer? Perhaps not all of them were lost. Perhaps the blood of the watchers runs still, hidden, waiting. And if so, their union was not only forbidden, it was prophetic, because what happened on Mount Hermon was not just history, it was the beginning of a pattern, one that would repeat at the end of days. The heavens do not forget. Though the watchers fell and the earth groaned beneath their weight, the eyes of God remained fixed upon them. The cries of the dying rose like incense, and the blood of the innocent stained the soil that once reflected Eden's light. Justice, long restrained, was about to descend. Enoch, the man who still walked with the divine, was taken beyond the veil. There, in the realm of fire and thunder, he saw what the fallen angels had never imagined. The throne of the Most High. Rivers of living flame flowed from beneath it, and around that light stood hosts without number, shining with the brilliance of 1,000 suns. And in that holy court the sentence was spoken: bind them beneath the mountains of the earth. Cover their faces so that they see not light, nor sky, nor mercy, until the great day of judgment. The angels who had once soared among the stars screamed as they were cast down. Chains of fire coiled around them. Darkness swallowed their radiance. The watchers who once shone brighter than dawn were buried beneath the foundations of the world. Their voices, once songs of creation, became the whispers of fear that echo through caverns and dreams, and yet their leader, Azazel, received a punishment unlike any other. The Lord said, "To him give all sin." It was as though every evil deed birthed by their rebellion would bear his name. The corruption of mankind, the violence of kings, the deceit of the serpent, all gathered into one spirit, one curse. Then came the flood. The heavens opened and the fountains of the deep erupted. Waters poured from above and below, swallowing the towers of the Nephilim, drowning their temples of gold. The cries of the mighty fell silent beneath the rising tide. But even as judgment cleansed the world, something remained. The breath of the watchers lingered, not in body but in memory. The knowledge they gave humanity could not be drowned. It was written in symbols etched into stone, hidden in the rituals of the ancient world. And as the waters receded, the earth was quiet again. But in that silence, a promise burned, that one day When pride returned to mankind, the Watchers' influence would rise once more. From Babylon to Egypt, from the temples of Greece to the mysteries of the East, fragments of their wisdom reappeared. The names changed, gods, demigods, spirits, but their essence was the same. Every myth of beings who descended from the heavens to teach humanity was a faint echo of their fall. And somewhere beneath the ground, beneath the stones and oceans, the imprisoned Watchers waited. Not dead, not free, only silent, until the time appointed, that when heaven's gates will open again and judgment will no longer be only for them, but for us. Time washed over the ruins, yet the memory endured. Though the flood silenced their footsteps, the world could not forget the beings who had once walked as gods among men. Their shadows lingered in temples and in tongues, in the stones of civilizations that rose upon their ashes. Every culture remembered them, though by different names. In Egypt, they were called the Shining Ones, builders of the pyramids aligned with the stars. In Greece, they became the Titans, banished to the depths of the earth. In Mesopotamia, they were the Anunnaki, divine rulers who descended from the heavens to teach men kingship. And in Canaan, their memory twisted into dread. The Rephaim, the giants who haunted the valleys, whose graves men dared not disturb. It was as if the whole world carried fragments of one forbidden story, the time when heaven touched the ground and would not let go. Even their symbols endured, wings carved in stone, halos of fire, serpents entwined around staffs. The Watchers were gone, but their teachings were not. They had left mankind with the knowledge of the stars, of metals, of power. And with knowledge came the oldest temptation, the desire to become like gods. Empires were built upon that legacy. Kings rose claiming descent from beings of light. Priests whispered invocations drawn from languages that no human mind could have invented. And somewhere, in the hidden corners of the world, secret orders began to keep their wisdom alive. Some say the Tower of Babel itself was an attempt to call them back, to reopen the gate between heaven and earth. And when God scattered the languages of men, it wasn't only to stop their pride, it was to seal away the knowledge that once nearly destroyed creation. Yet traces of that wisdom reappeared again and again, in the patterns of sacred geometry, in the alignments of ancient monuments, in prophecies carved into stone. Every generation that reached too far into the heavens seemed to awaken their echo once more. Even prophets felt the weight of their memory. The prophet Daniel spoke of kingdoms ruled by powers not of this world. Isaiah warned of the spirits in prison, bound yet restless beneath the mountains. And John, in Revelation, saw what would happen when they were released again. The bottomless pit was opened, and smoke rose like the smoke of a great furnace. If this prophecy is true, the memory of their reign was not a warning, it was a countdown. Because what humanity remembers as myth, heaven remembers as rebellion unfinished. And just as the first descent began with desire, the last will begin with deception. For every time man reaches for forbidden light, the Watchers draw closer to the gate. And one day that gate will open again. Next we will uncover what the ancients feared most, not the fall of the Watchers, but their return. Not all who descended were lost. For while some angels fell into darkness, bound beneath the earth, others remained faithful, silent sentinels among men. Their names were never written in rebellion, but in mercy. They walked unseen through fire and ruin, guiding the fragile hearts of those who still sought the light. Scripture hints at them, hidden in plain sight. When Abraham lifted his eyes and saw 3 strangers approaching his tent, he did not know they were messengers of God. When Jacob wrestled through the night with a mysterious man who touched his hip and blessed him, he did not realize he had fought with one of heaven's own. And when Daniel stood trembling before the angel Gabriel, the veil was pulled back for only a moment, and the prophet saw what the world had long forgotten, that the heavenly still walk among the living. The Bible speaks of them not as myths but as protectors, guardians who move unseen through history's storms. They came to rescue Lot before fire fell on Sodom, to deliver Peter from his chains, to strengthen Christ in Gethsemane. They come still, though few recognize them. Enoch called them the Watchers of the Light, those who refused to join their fallen brethren. They kept their posts among the stars, but were permitted to cross the boundary only when commanded by the Most High. To them, Humanity is not a failed experiment, but a mission not yet finished, and yet even they weep, for they have seen what men have done with the remnants of divine knowledge. The very teachings that once came from heaven, astronomy, metallurgy, medicine, have become instruments of war, greed, and pride. Once again, mankind climbs toward the sky, not in worship but in defiance. Ancient prophecies warn that when humanity learns to imitate the powers of heaven, when it creates life from clay, commands the air and seeks immortality through its own hands, the veil between worlds will thin once more, and those who are bound below will stir. That is why the faithful angels still walk among us, to restrain, to protect, to delay the inevitable. They move through our lives quietly, a stranger who speaks the right word at the right moment, a hand that pulls you from the edge, a presence that saves you from disaster for no reason you can explain. The Apostle Paul once wrote, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so some have entertained angels unawares." Perhaps you already have. The unseen war between heaven and the fallen continues, not in the clouds, but in every heart. Because before the final descent comes, the faithful still walk the earth, holding the line between light and darkness. But when that line breaks, the silence of heaven will end, and the final angel will ride forth, not as a messenger but as a king. It is written that at the end of all things, heaven will open once more, and not in beauty but in fire. The Apostle John saw it long before it happened, a white horse and the one who rode it crowned with many crowns. His eyes were flames, his robe dipped in blood, and his name, the Word of God. But before that day comes, other angels will descend first, not all bearing light, for Revelation speaks of a war in heaven, a final battle that spills into the earth. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. It is not a myth, it is a warning. The watchers who fell long ago are not gone. Their prisons are not eternal. They are timed. Enoch wrote that their chains would last for 70 generations. That number is almost complete. The abyss is cracking. The same mountains that sealed their rebellion will open their mouths again, and what was buried will rise. In our age, science calls it progress. The ancients called it hubris. We are unlocking powers once reserved for the divine, commanding light, reshaping flesh, reaching beyond the stars. The same hunger that once drew the watchers to earth now beats in the heart of humanity. But every echo calls back an answer, and soon heaven will respond. When the first trumpet sounds, the faithful will look to the sky, and the world will remember what it has tried to forget. Angels are not metaphors, and heaven's armies are not myths. The war that began before history will end in plain sight. The prophets foresaw the chaos, nations trembling, kings hiding in caves, the very sky rolling back like a scroll. But they also saw something else, a rider on a white horse leading an army clothed in light. It will not be the watchers who return first. It will be their judge. And in that day, the final descent will not belong to rebellion but to redemption. The same sky that once opened in sorrow will open in glory. The same earth that once bled will see its healing. And the same humanity that once was tempted will finally be transformed. The Watcher's story will end where it began, at the meeting point between heaven and earth. But this time no angel will fall. Only one truth will stand, that even the might of heaven bows before the Lamb. If you believe that day is near, write these words as your declaration. I will stand with the light when the heavens open again, for the next time the angels walk among men, it will not be to teach, but to judge.